Hey Shipt shoppers, this is Brittany from Shipt HQ, and today I'm on site with the Jones Valley Teaching Farm. Jones Valley is a nonprofit here in Birmingham that runs a school education program called Good School Food that Shipt is honored to sponsor. Nearly every order that you take will include something from the produce section, and as expert shoppers, it's really important that we pick the perfect fruits and vegetables for our members. I'm here today at Jones Valley Teaching Farm with my friends Leah and Haley. They're instructors here, and they're going to coach us today on how to pick the perfect fruits and vegetables. Ladies, thank you so much for having me at the farm today.
It's our pleasure.
So you're experts in picking fresh fruits and vegetables based on your work here at Jones Valley Teaching Farm. And Haley, you're also a Shipt shopper, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, you're just the right folks to teach us today. Leah, tell us what we should be looking for in picking vegetables.
With most vegetables, like peppers, carrots, cucumbers, you really want the vegetable to be as firm as possible. Any bruising or softness can be an indication of spoilage. So vegetables don't really give off too much of a smell like fruits do when you pick them. They're actually a little harder to tell, but if you do get a slight hint of spoilage, then likely move on to another one.
Okay, perfect. And then leafy greens. I understand that we've been able to harvest some kale from the farm here today. Tell us what we should look for with leafy greens.
So right here we have some kale that we grew here on the farm. Many of these leaves are really great, so they're nice and firm. If I look on the front of the leaf and the back of the leaf, there's no insect damage, there's no issues from frost. Again, like leafy greens are often wilty in a grocery store, so you want to definitely make sure that's still firm. So right here we have an example of some damage. So there's some frost damage, and there's other parts of the leaf that are ripping, and so that is a leaf that you probably wouldn't want to choose for a customer.
Okay, perfect. And we also have root vegetables that we're asked to buy for our members sometimes, onions, potatoes, garlic, things like that. What should we be looking for? Those don't have the smell and the fragrance that we can see with fruits, so what should we look for there?
With root vegetables, you really want to look for vegetables that are firm as well. You want them not to have any cracks around them with things like onions, with garlic, beets, turnips. Look around the base for any cracks that might indicate that they're really dry. So just look for a nice firm root vegetable.
Okay, perfect. And speaking of fragrance, I oftentimes see people smelling fruits in the produce section. Why in the world would you do that?
So with a lot of fruits, especially pineapple, I always like to smell the base of them because you want to have a slight scent of that fruit. So this one's perfectly ripe. I can still smell the pineapple, but it's not like super potent and strong. Super potent smells can often mean that it's overripe and that when you cut into it, it's going to be pretty spoiled.
Okay, and then other than smelling, any other tips regarding fruits and picking up fruits?
Yeah, so things like citrus or other fruits, you kind of want to just pick them up, and before you squeeze them and leave them bruised for other customers, kind of toss them around in your hand. They should have like a smooth surface, slightly firm, but there are things like citrus, plums, nectarines. If they're too firm, then they're likely unripe. And so just being able to feel them with a little bit of a give, but still a slight hint of firmness.
Okay, and so Haley, moving on to avocados. This is one of the top things that we hear from members of my avocado was too ripe, my avocado was underripe. How do you pick out a good avocado?
So when I'm in the store picking out avocados, I'm trying to look for something that is kind of a dark green or like a nice brown color, not super black because that means it's overripe, and not bright green or hard because that means that's really not ripe at all, and it would probably take about a week for it to become ripe. So often you can look at the stem of the avocado, and if it's still present, that means that's not overripe. They often fall off when they become overripe. And so as a Shipt shopper, if I wasn't sure what kind of ripeness my customer was looking for, maybe they're making guacamole later in the week and they don't mind it to be a little bit underripe, but maybe they need it to be ripe that day, I would definitely want to text them and ask to make sure that I was getting the right ripeness that they were looking for.
Perfect. And then, Leah, sometimes members ask for things in bags, like bagged lettuce, bagged vegetables. What should they look for when selecting bags?
One thing to look for first when you're selecting a bagged vegetable is the use by date. So use by dates are really important. You don't want something that's going to be almost expired as soon as you buy it. So you might have to dig around a little bit and go to the back of the shelf, but finding a longer use by date. Also check the bottom of the bag. Make sure that there's not a lot of moistness there or that there aren't wilting vegetables at the bottom. And you should be good to go with bagged vegetables.
And sometimes not just bagged vegetables, but things like strawberries come in those containers. What should we look for when picking those out?
Yeah, so strawberries are kind of the same way as well. You kind of want to turn it over, make sure that none of the strawberries on the bottom have mold on them. You don't want a lot of extra moistness there as well. Sometimes you might see all the good fruits on top, but the bottom is just going to be rotting. So definitely turn it over, get a feel for it, and you should be good to go.
Okay, perfect. And Haley, tell me what we should be looking for when we're picking out mushrooms.
So mushrooms are one of my personal favorite foods to eat, and often when I'm picking out mushrooms, I'm looking for something that's nice and firm, doesn't have any bruises, anything that's having any wetness, because that often means mushrooms that are on their way out. So these mushrooms right here look really great. They're nice and bright and firm, and they all look undamaged.
Okay, great. And then last question, tell me what we need to know when picking out herbs.
So herbs are a lot like the leafy greens that Haley was talking about earlier, in that you don't want them to be wilted and you don't want them to be bruised or dried out. So they are very sensitive, so be mindful when you're putting them into your cart. You don't want to set them at the bottom or even in your bag. They shouldn't be at the bottom, because things you could put on top of them would bruise them and then damage them too.
Perfect. And the last tip is that we ask our shoppers to have some sort of cooler with a cold source or insulated bag to make sure that the produce is staying nice and cool and fresh between the store and our delivery location. A huge thank you to Leah and Haley for all of your information. This was really helpful. Shoppers, thank you so much for tuning in today to learn more about selecting the perfect produce. And don't forget the Shipt shopper mantra of be accurate, be awesome, be on time. Happy shopping.